Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back. Now we're going to proceed on with our next session in DEAMS Discoverer Viewer and a few additional reports. Previously, we've already covered status of funds, we've covered the STH, and the DEAMS FMA vendor payment history. So just a reminder for those of you who may have not joined us before, if you haven't already gone into Edit Favorites and add Discoverer Viewer, please do so. One of the best tips is to add right-click just before. If you do not right-click and you just click into Discoverer Viewer, you have no avenue back to DEAMS, so you have to close out and log back in. You can also find Discovery Viewer right down here in our navigator by clicking on the folder. The responsibility will show up here and you can right-click. So just right-click, open either a new tab or a new window, personal preference is applied, and it will open up. Once it opens up, it'll ask you for your CAC certificate and get you to the worksheet list. This is where you can type in anything that you're looking at searching for. Right now, on this series, we're going to focus on invoices and 1081s. So the first report I'm going to show you is a 1081 report. And we're looking at 1081 approval statuses is what we're trying to find. So what we'll find right here is the DEAMS SF 1081 invoices approval status. This is a great report for showing you exactly where everything is in your 1081s and anything that you can find that's approved. You will also find your DOVs so that you can close out. So we're just going to go ahead and click on that sheet name right here, the SF 1081 invoice status, so it opens up the parameters. Under our DEAMS site ID, you're going to enter your F7P or whatever your 3-digit prefix is. Please make sure it's your 3-digit prefix that you're looking for. And something that DEAMS Help Desk has told me is enter a wildcard, or you can use it blank, but they prefer a wildcard. It's a reporting function issue. So go ahead and then put in your OAC and OBAN. If you're looking for anything specific, you can drill down. I've only been on DEAMS a year and a half, so I'm just going to run it wide open and click go. With the advent of magical technology, you won't have to wait here for the 2 to 3 minutes while it runs. I'll just go ahead and bring you back once it comes up. Alright, welcome back. I've already gone through and enabled my content, which took the second tab that was down here and said macro, ran it through the background, and then it created the nice clearly defined headers. There was 3 lines up here that needed to be highlighted and deleted so that our header row is always in row 1. Reference any of the previous videos for the step-by-step for that. But now we have an Excel 1997 to 2003 formatted by macro punch out of the 1081 approval status report. So to go through the report a little bit and why it's nice to see it, you have your DEAMS site ID here listed all the way down and below. And just to help us kind of see what else is under there, I'm just going to use the filter function versus scrolling. And now we have our invoice batch name, which is really kind of nice because notice that the invoice batch name and the invoice number, even though you may make them very similar during the process, especially when you do a GPC 1081, the batch name remains the same, but the invoice number converts down to the PO that's affected by the invoice. So that's something to definitely pay attention to, because when you're looking through your STH, this number is referenced, and you may have copied down the actual template that's in your business rules. Here's the invoice date. That was the date it was originally done. Mixed is going to pretty much be the standard invoice type code. There are going to be other 1081s that come through, but for you, it's going to be mixed. Invoice type, you'll notice that 1081 is all we have. Here's your wide area workflow approval status. We do have manually approved, we have not required, we have rejected, and then we have wide area or just straight approved. So those are ways to look and see what is out there as a rejected status and what needs to go. We can always sort by the invoice amount and notice that a majority of the invoice amounts are 0 because any 1081 should be a net 0 gain. However, some of these other totals are parts of larger 1081s done at Air Force level. So those are actually impacting our OAC and OBAN differently than the total amount of the invoice. So now we can also see that the invoice distribution amount is here, and now it's not listed total. So here's your OAC and your OBAN. Here's your fund code, the fiscal year that was affected. So here you'll notice the top one. This was crediting FY16 and debiting FY15 for our RCCC, and here's our PEC if there's any ESPs associated with it. And then the batch date was the date that it was actually the last time it was tried to transact. And then here's the payment batch name that was successful. If it does reject or go through, this will not have any information on it. And then here's the final payment date. So then we have our disbursement voucher, which is nice because you'll notice these are similar to when you look in CRIS and you see the disbursement or the collection voucher. Depending on what type of a transaction it is, understand that they will have both, but typically the disbursement will be the debit and the collection will be the credit. Now we have our PTEO, our project number, our task number, our expenditure organization, our expenditure type. And then here's our USSGL and transaction exemption code. And then your approval iteration, not necessarily any information you need to know there. But another nice function is that it will show you exactly what you typed in for your invoice distribution description. So now you're able to see, okay, did I not add the DOV information? Did I not add the Julian date in parentheses? What information was not provided that was necessary for that batch, and how did we make the mistake? So that's a brief rundown of the 1081 approval status. We'll go back to DEAMS and we'll run another 1081 report. Now we're back to our worksheet list, and notice that 1081 is here and we're still zoomed in. All I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this Discover Workbooks function here, though, because the next workbook we want to take away that focus and bring back everything with 1081. So now what I want to do is I want to look at OpenGPC releases 1081 JVs. What this will actually show me is when we're looking for our open 1081s and JVs, now we're going to click on this 1081 and JV link to bring up the parameters. But this is going to show us anything that is open, meaning that it has not been fully submitted. It's sitting at the initiator and it's waiting to look for there. So now we're looking for an endpoint, a date to pull invoices earlier than. Just go ahead and use today. Remember to keep your caps lock on because DEAMS does not like anything else. And then this. And then click go. And now we'll wait and let it run in the background, and we'll be back momentarily. Alright, so this one runs much quicker, and you'll notice that we only have 2 lines because there's only one invoice. So we're just going to go ahead and export that so we can see all of our columns. So clicking on Export, going up to the Microsoft Excel workbook, allow the page to refresh and click on Export. It'll package the file here into a button. Click View or Save As. Always save as in DEAMS, and then navigate to where you would like to save your files. I'm going to leave it as a 97-2003 workbook right now. I just go down to my OpenJVs 1081, click Save, overwrite the same file, and now we're just going to go ahead and click Open. Now that we have it open, understand again, here's that macro one I talked about in the last segment with enabled content. I'm just going to go ahead and click in enabled content, and we'll see where it ends up. Now that we've enabled content, notice the macro tab is gone, but now we're nicely formatted all the way across. So the attribute category here for our 1081 or JVs on open is just a 1081. We notice that it has not been paid. The original invoice date was in November, and here's our GPC invoice number. Now remember from the last one, we can go back and look at the approval status report and find that invoice number to find the batch name, and therefore we can look it back up in there. So here's our line item amounts. Here's the segment of the fund that's being hit. Segment 2, notice this is a mil-pers transaction for clothing that we're going back to 2016 GPC, or crediting the 2016 and debiting the 2015. Here's our segment 6, which is a GLAC, but it's just a treasury allotment GLAC. The username that input it, the pay group, the email address that the member used. So this is easy to find out who has it sitting in their DEAMS level and how to get a hold of them. Give them the proper invoice number. You can research the last one to find the batch name, and then you can track it down and get them to either cancel it or get it back routed. So let's look at one more. So now we're back here in our workbook, and all we're going to do on this one is we're going to highlight this and we're going to type in on hold. This is a big report because you want to make sure that this stays as clean as possible. So here we're looking for our invoices on hold. We're just going to expand that down. And then under our invoices on hold, all we're going to look at is invoices. And we're going to bring up the parameter screen. Now that we have our parameter screen up, all I'm going to look for is my OE. And then all the pay group is, I'm just going to put in a wildcard here, and I'm going to click Go. Now we're going to let the query run in the background, and we're going to be able to find out if we have anything on hold. This may come up blank, which is a very good thing. Holds mean rejects. Rejects have reasons by DFAS, and typically they tell you that you either did not or supply something properly to support the JV or the 1081, or there might be other invoices for interfunds that are on hold because a batch errored out. So we'll let this run. I'll bring you back as soon as it's done. And here we are. I've gone ahead and enabled content to allow the macro to run and allow it to format nicely. So here again, remember we're talking about all types of invoices, not just 1081s or JVs. So the attribute category could be a 1081, could be a JV, could be interfund, could be anything that's out there against your OE. It's on hold right now for a reject or a batch error. So here we're worried about our 1081s. Created by, this is a DEAMS user number. You can go ahead and research back if you'd like in a user report listing. Creation date, the invoice date that they did it. Here's the invoice number that they, remember, they did not manually do this. They probably typed it in per your business rules, but DEAMS defaulted it back to the PO that's being affected because it's a GPC 1081. So then we go through here and we have our pay group lookup code, our hold description, which is typically null because our hold reason is what we're looking for. So notice that we created it on 22 March. The hold actually applied on 15 April. So it took a little bit longer. But here's our hold reason. This is typed in by DFAS, which is a convenient report, so you don't have to dig through Java and find it. It needs additional backup to show all orders that were in 15. The only backup supports $101.90. Well, notice they wanted to try and credit and debit $1,255.28. So that's the issue they're running into. It also gives you all of your accounting data elements that you can try and find. So we know that it's an LRS GPC just by the RCCC and the OC. And then we can go all the way down and through and notice that here, the DEAMS DR should have the PO of the GPC moored for the prior fiscal year, and you have to have the PO number associated. So these are three very useful tools in diagnosing your invoices, your 1081s, and your JVs. Hope you enjoyed this presentation of DEAMS Discoverer Viewer, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.